Hello and good afternoon and welcome to the MMA Shower episode 15, sponsored by Hatton James Legal, hattonjameslegal.co.uk for all your employment law needs. Okay, and welcome to the MMA Shower episode 15. In this month's episode, we'll be previewing UFC235, which is John Jones versus Anthony Smith, and it's got another title fight on the card, which is Usman versus Tyron Woodley. So it's one of probably the biggest card of the year so far, and it'll probably be the biggest card at the end of the year as well. So fantastic card lined up. So before we get into the podcast, I've got two special guests, which I'll introduce in a moment. So just to let you know, the usual way to contact the show is email is the MMA Show 7, the MMA Show number 7 at gmail.com. Twitter is at the MMA Show, and Facebook is Let's Talk MMA. So you can find us on Facebook and obviously send us emails with comments and suggestions on the show. Whether they're good or bad, don't really mind. Sometimes the bad ones are quite funny. But moving on to introducing the show. So first of all, it's Mr. John McElroy from the Martial Arts Chat podcast. And welcome again, John, to the show.
Pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me back on. It's always a pleasure to be in your company, sir.
Thank you, John. And John, are you on episode 500 at the moment of your...
Yeah, it's up there, man. It's up there. It's about 100 and something for the ones I've kept count.
Yeah.
Things are going well in the old podcasting scene. We've got Cage Warriors episode that's out just now for Cage Warriors London. And we'll be getting into UFC235 as well.
Yeah. Okay, and your content is quality is fantastic, and I did watch the Cage Warriors podcast as well. So it's you're doing some good stuff there, man.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and next is a first-time guest on the show. First-time guest, long-time podcast listener, probably not, but Chris Allen, how are you, sir?
Hi G, how you doing? Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on. Really appreciate it. I've listened to a couple of your shows on YouTube before, definitely. Look forward to actually being on your show today. And we've got some interesting topics to talk about UFC235, and it's a pleasure to be with you as well, John.
Because you're on first time, Chris, just give us your contact details and your podcast and your any other social media stuff you're doing regarding MMA.
Well, I'm still relatively quite new to the podcasting scene. I personally don't have my own podcast yet, but I am in the process of setting one up. I have appeared on John's show a few times, and I'm doing a couple of other things outside of this at the moment, so watch this space. But my Facebook page is MMA Fight Bible. We've only been going for just over a year, or about a year and a half now. Please give us a like and a follow, and really appreciate it.
Okay, excellent, Chris, and welcome. So we're good. What we're going to do is we're going to preview, as I said, UFC 235. Now the card is absolutely a mega card, and we could easily fill 2 hours. You've got Kobe Garbrandt on there. You've got Diego Sanchez on there. You've got Holly Holm and a number of other fights that could easily could give us quite a few minutes to talk about. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through the main the three fights, the 2 title fights, which is obviously Jones versus Smith and Woodley versus Usman, and then we've got a debutant, Ben Askren, making his UFC debut versus the evergreen killer, Robbie Ruthless Lawler. So some really good fights to talk about there. So I'd just like to get your view first of all on John Jones, Chris. Bit of a likes to be in the headlines. Maybe doesn't like to be, but he is always in the headlines. Just give us your just a bit of an outline of when he came back and all the drugs and whatever. Just give us a couple of minutes on your thoughts on that.
Well, to be honest with you, I've been watching John Jones since he joined the UFC and became the UFC's youngest champion. And him coming back from everything that's been going on, I personally don't think he took any of these drugs to enhance his performance, because personally I think we can all actually see that he doesn't need any sort of performance-enhancing drugs at all. The guy's an absolute warrior. He's a beast on the ground, he's a beast on the feet. No one can really ever touch him, well, apart from the Gustafsson fight, which was pretty hectic. The first one, that is, not the most recent one.
Yeah.
And for him to come back after all that speculation in the media, he's still relatively young. You know, all that speculation on yourself, every part of your life being watched. You know, he just wanted to go out and he earned his money in the UFC, won a few titles, and wanted to go out and party and have some fun. Well, obviously he partied a little bit too hard, but you can see he's come back. He's completely sorry about everything he's done, and the way, the attitude he's had towards it all, and coming back and still keeping his mental focus, keeping his attitude towards the sport positive.
Yeah.
Especially coming back and beating Daniel Cormier, obviously that was beforehand, then come back and beating Gustafsson as easily as he did. I'll say easily, but it was a lot easier than the initial fight they had.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and I think he's done great coming back as he has.
Okay. Mr. McElroy, your thoughts, just a quick minute?
Gee, you need to remind me, am I allowed to swear on this show?
Go on then, yeah.
Yeah, the guy's a wank, man. Like, John Jones is he's just an absolute scumbag, and the people that are running the UFC brass now are just bending rules and making dodgy samples disappear. And you know, what is this, the picogram that forever stays in your system?
Pico,
the test, you know, right after it, and all of a sudden that picogram has disappeared now from your system.
Yeah.
It's just a shit show, man. That he's one of the few cash cows that got left, John Jones, and they'll do whatever it takes to make sure that he headlines. In many situations has he messed up. Now, UFC 200 was a massive win. He's cost the company so much money, but he generates so much money. Probably the controversy helps generate it, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Bad news is obviously, you know, we saw with
publicity.
the Conor stuff. It helps, doesn't it? So, I've got no positive things to say about John Jones. Love watching him fight.
Yeah.
As a human being, he's a piece of shit.
Okay, all right. Don't sit on the fence, John. Yeah, I mean, that's a classic example. John Jones is a polarizing figure. You're either going to love him or hate him. Chris has admiration for him, which is perfectly fine, and John is completely on the other end of the scale. So that's the kind.
If he wants to make it to this card, though, then he has my full attention.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the kind of figure he is. He obviously he's a problem in many senses of the word. He's a problem to the UFC. He's a problem probably to his family. You know, it's not nice for the family to see what he goes through. But the biggest thing, he's a big problem for his opponents, and I think that will come up in early March. So, okay, moving on to Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren. Chris, just give us your thoughts on the fight and how they match up stylistically, and then give us a wee prediction at the end of your analysis, please.
Well, actually, I think this is probably the best fight for Askren to come into. I don't think he should be coming straight into a title fight. Don't get me wrong, he is undefeated in his whole career, and maybe he should jump straight to it. But Lawler, personally, I think is going to be his biggest test to date. If you look at the previous organisations, no disrespect to any of the fighters there. Maybe when he fought Douglas Lima, it was a similar sort of fighter. But with Robbie Lawler, see, he's got wrestling credentials as well. But on the feet, you know, with Robbie Lawler, as you can see, it only takes one shot from Lawler, and he's gritty as well. You can drive him all the way to the final round. Look what happened with Rory McDonald. He didn't give up once. He was losing that fight and pushed through to the end.
Yeah.
But one thing I have to say about Askren is with Lawler is you can notice. There wasn't too much smack talk going on between those two, as he likes to give a lot of people. But as he said, what can you say about Lawler? The guy's a legend. He's a future Hall of Famer. You know, I've been watching him since he had hair.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. When he got slapped by Nick Diaz, and stopped and slapped.
The famous highlight reel knockout. I think we've all seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
and my prediction is, unfortunately, I do see Askren winning this. It's purely because of his ground game. You see that guy get hold of anyone, his hands just like clinch onto him like some sort of like cyborg hands or something like that. He just doesn't let it go. He's a strong Khabib. He's a big Khabib in my eyes, and I think he's going to come in and dominate.
But the level up for Askren, that has to be a slight question mark, I think.
Yeah. So big. Sorry.
Yeah. Carry on. Yeah.
So I think beating Lawler, being such a veteran as he is, will cement his place in the UFC to begin his is rise to the top, and but if he doesn't win, well, I don't know, no one's even thought about that yet. That's the interesting thing. No one's thought about, well, what if Askren doesn't win?
Yeah.
Everyone's counting Lawler out already, but as we've seen, Lawler many a time that counts him out.
Yeah, and you're right that when Askren does take down someone, he's got this weird ability which not all American wrestlers have. I think he does a lot of folk style wrestling, which is sort of tying people up and having, advantages of tying one arm up and hitting with the other. He has sort of suction pads on his hands and legs that they just can't shrug him off. They're obviously strong athletes, but he finds a way to, as they call it in wrestling, riding and sticking to them.
But one thing you can say with Askren though is that he doesn't just he might not have the most exciting style to watch, but he's not your usual lay and pray. You can see his last 2 fights he won by TKO. Punches, he won by submission before that. So he does like to finish his fights when he can.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris, you said you're going for Ben.
Yeah, I think Askren's just going to hold him on the floor like anything. I don't think he'll finish Lawler because that's near enough impossible.
Yeah. So a sort of a 3-round decision, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going Askren third round unanimous decision.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. John.
You brought up a good point, Chris. I never even thought, what if Robbie Lawler does win? Because that's where the focus is on Askren. And the focus was on Askren at this press conference as well. Nothing to do with Lawler, just the back and forth between Dana White and Ben Askren. That's what I've been loving about it most, to be honest. I love people who are sticking it to Dana now because he's became even more slimy as this sort of promotions change hands or whatever, this new era that we're in. But yeah, in terms of Askren's skills, man, look for double unders, look for body locks. Look for wrapping up both arms and throws. There's a lot of that in his wrestling game. Can he do it to Robbie Lawler? That's the big question. Because Robbie Lawler brings massive amount of wrestling credentials and also brings power and technique in the striking game. It's going to be a great test. This is probably the best fight they could make for Askren coming in. It's not a title fight. It's perfect. Sets everything up. If Robbie Lawler beats him, does that put him back in a title contention? Maybe not after his RDA loss, but it certainly keeps him in the conversation. Ben Askren, man, a winner over Ruthless here. Yeah. Man, that does wonders for him, and I'm going for Askren in this one. I think he'll get the finish. I think it'll be late on, and I think he'll get the TKO over. I feel bad saying it, but I think he will.
Do you think he'll be a ground and pound?
Absolutely, third round.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking at UFC.com and they've got Robbie Lawler and Ben Askren. They've got no picture of Ben Askren. It's just a shadow. And Robbie's reach is 74 inch. Ben Askren's reach is 0 inch. Leg reach, which I presume is extending your leg for a kick, is 39 inches for Robbie, and 0 inches for Ben. So based on those stats,
that's always wrestles everyone. So his reach and his kick reach doesn't actually matter.
Yeah. They're basing it on, well, he's not going to punch and he's not going to kick. So, but that's a bit weird. They haven't even updated. Maybe Dana's got something to do with that. Maybe he's just playing with Ben again. But it's on UFC.com. It's there's no picture of poor Ben Askren. He's not that ugly. Is
Dana White still blocked him on Twitter? I heard that was
Probably. Dana can get quite petty, can't he?
Well, that press conference they had a little while ago now, he gave the thumbs up to Dana. They said they're all friends and stuff, and apparently Askren said to Dana after the fight, but wouldn't it be funny if we did just carry on pretending we hated each other? That's what he said on, I think it was Ariel Hawani.
Oh, yes.
And he's having, and Dana White is like, basically, no, I don't do that WWE sort of stuff. He didn't say that. He didn't say that as a quote, but I'm saying
yes.
that he basically said that.
It would remind everyone of Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon when they had that feud against each other, and I think that's what they were trying to allude to. And Dana doesn't play games, does he? No, of course not. He's straight as a die.
Next thing you know, they'll be having ceremonies in the cage. Someone storming in and hitting someone with a chair or something.
Yeah.
Or people jumping over the cage,
Oh yeah, I've heard that happen sometimes.
Yeah, the odd time, yes. The odd fighter can fly. I haven't really got anything to add. I think Ben Askren, it's the only question mark, well, not the only question mark, but obviously is levels. This is all about levels, but he's such an expert at what he does that I think pretty much apart from Khabib, you could probably put anyone in front of him, in front of Ben, and he would pretty much do what he wants with that other person, which sounds a bit sadistic, but in a fighting sense. So apart from Khabib, I don't think anyone could stop him. So I'm going to go for Ben, and I'm going to agree with Mr. McElroy, which we don't normally agree that often. I think he'll tire, because it is the way Ben wrestled is tiring. He doesn't, like you say, lay and pray. He's holding this arm, then you sort of struggle free. Then he's got that arm, then he's got this leg. Then he's, you're taking his weight while you're trying to get up, and if you do, you're probably getting back down, which is extremely tiring. So I think he will certainly test Robbie's cardio, and I reckon he could ground and pound Robbie on the ground. But I think Ben is real old school. He knows he's never going to be good at classical boxing or Muay Thai, and so he doesn't try to really imitate anyone. But I'm going for Ben Askren. Okay, moving on to Woodley versus Usman, which is a welterweight title fight. I was a bit surprised that Usman got the nod. I was expecting Covington, but he's got various problems, as well as trying to trash talk and not being able to, and all that kind of stuff. But John, Woodley versus Usman, what's your thoughts, and give us a prediction, please?
This is a foregone conclusion. It's Tyron Woodley's all day long. I mean, Kamaru Usman, I don't even know what he's doing in this fight. I'm not saying the guy's not got skills, right? But this one for me this should be in Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley, this fight.
Yeah.
Kamaru Usman's a fight or two away from a title fight, I believe. The same with Darren Till. When he got the title fight, I was like, what is he doing in this event? Give him another one, maybe two, before he gets the chosen one. Yeah, Tyron Woodley controls the wrestling. May make it a boring fight if he has to.
But I think with Till, it was like a certain crestable wave of hype. But with Usman, I can't really see that. Yeah. With Usman, I'm like you. I don't really understand why, but he's got it.
But yeah, my prediction is like Woodley will, if he has to, he'll make a boring fight. We saw that with Damian Maia. We saw that in the second Wonderboy fight.
Yeah.
He'll do what it takes to hold on to that belt, because he's keeping that belt. If it's a decision, if it's a knockout, if a situation presents itself like it did in the Darren Till fight, or whatever it takes, Woodley's getting the job done here.
Okay, cool. And you're predicting any particular method or just a win?
Woodley by whatever he wants. And then he'll say the guy's racist at the end there, probably.
And you probably say, congratulations, Tyron, and it would probably say, are you congratulating me because I'm black? No, I just congratulating you. So yeah, you can't win with some people. Chris, your thoughts, please.
Well, yeah, I do agree. I agree with John pretty much everything he said. I do think Usman is going to bring a bit more of a threat than Tyron's last couple of previous opponents. The reason I think Usman has got this shot, though, to be fair, is he did just beat RDA and Damian Maia in his last two fights. Don't get me wrong, it was only by unanimous decision. But with the win streak he's on at the moment, really, who else in the division have they got to choose right now? So I think Covington, I think the issue with him is he's too busy trying to sue the UFC, or God knows what he's doing. You hear all sorts of things at the moment with him. Yeah. But what I like about Usman is he's good. He is very good he's good on the feet, and he's very good on the ground as well. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's going to compare anything to what Tyron Woodley can do to him. But when we see fights where he threw Emil Meek around, I know different level, but he can throw people around. The brutal KO on the feet of Sergio Moraes. Yeah. But the one thing one thing's good, but it's going to be bad against Tyron Woodley. This is why Tyron Woodley's previous fights may not be seen as most exciting, and people back off from him. People like Usman keep coming forward, and he is going to keep coming forward even if he gets hit and stuff. But like you see in previous fights, he gets hit, he comes forward, he gets hit, he comes forward, he doesn't stop. But with Tyron, when Tyron hits him once, that's going to be the problem. Tyron's going to knock him straight to the ground. He's going to be like, what the hell happened there? So it's going to be another one of those situations, unfortunately, where I'd like Usman to obviously take Tyron, give Tyron a brutal sort of fight. I'd like to see Tyron in a proper good scrap, bloody sort of war. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think Tyron's going to do his usual counter-punching. He's going to knock out Usman, I think, in the first or second round if Usman does keep pushing forward. So yeah, I'll go for the second round Tyron Woodley KO. Not even a TKO, he's going to KO him. He's going to be up for the floor.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So
everything.
The whole shooting match. I mean, Woodley, yeah, he can be exciting, but he can be just as boring. He sort of goes on the two extremes of the spectrum. I mean, I think when he does knock out people, it's normally pretty spectacular. I mean, Josh Koscheck comes to mind, Robbie Lawler obviously to win the belt, and Darren Till was a decent sort of knockdown first anyway. But his record is only 37% for someone who does possess that kind of power. So, he's not a prolific knockout artist, but he obviously can do it. And actually, Usman has got more higher percentage. He's got 46% KO.
But you see with Koscheck though and Lawler, they're the sort of fighters that keep coming forward, and look what happened.
Yeah,
that's what I think is going to happen to Usman.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt there.
No, that's fine. Yeah. And I think I haven't seen that many fights. I saw the Maia fight and the RDA fight with Usman, but he seems relatively slow, and I think that could play in Woodley's hands when we all know Woodley can cover the distance in a flash, like he did with Robbie Lawler. So I think if Usman switches off for a millisecond, he could be looking up at the lights and blinking, quite vigorously. So wrestling wise, I think Usman's very high level as well, because Ben Askren was talking about he was in the Olympic trials, I presume for the USA, even though he's Nigerian by birth and brought up. But so he's got caliber wrestling, and then obviously Woodley's got high caliber NCAA credentials as well. So I think that might sort of cancel each other out, and it probably be down to who lands the biggest punch. So I'm going to go with Woodley, probably third round, I think. Yeah.
Good shot.
Yeah.
You look at I'm just looking at Robbie Lawler's resume compared to Kamara's. I know Robbie's been around for a long time, but Kamara's got some living up to do if he wants to take the title.
Yeah. Well, that's what John said. Maybe a fight or two a bit early for Usman.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe if he fought another couple of high-level opponents, and then he would be really primed. But now, is he being pushed into it? Possibly because of the Covington situation. But yeah, so it should be interesting. But I think Woodley, he's a good champion, but he needs to fight more often and be more exciting, I think, and not moan so much. Just enjoy your fame and fortune. So moving on to the main event, John Jones versus Anthony Smith, and I think some people are sort of questioning, why Smith getting the title fight, but I think the lack of depth in the light heavyweight division probably answers that question. So, John, what's your thoughts on the main event, John Jones versus Anthony Smith?
Well, I'll start with Anthony Smith because a few shows back on the round table we were talking about Victor Vargas. I'm sure you guys have been on with it, brought up about middleweights that don't cut weight anymore, like Thiago Santos, like Anthony Smith, and they're moving up to this light heavyweight division, and they're finding a new home, and everything's awesome. And no full time as well. I mean, I'm a big advocate for weight cuts are ridiculous, and it's not really needed.
Yeah.
Just fight at your natural weight. And Anthony Smith has really been on a tear in the light heavyweight division. Okay, it's only been 2 or 3 fights, but it's the Volkan Ozdemir fight was the big one, because Volkan Ozdemir was the guy who was the hype. He was, he got the setback with DC, but everyone was like, that's a setback. It's early in his career. He'll come back and he'll be a champion one day.
Yeah.
And Anthony Smith got a stop to that, man. Rear naked choke and weathered a storm to get there. He was bloodied up, he struggled. So I'm liking Smith in this fight against John Jones. Oh man, he's the greatest of all time, and despite his shenanigans outside the cage. And you're right about the lack of depth. I mean, look at Gustafsson in the last fight. I mean, he's only getting the fight because there ain't a lot really to pick from. There's no Anthony Rumble Johnson anymore. DC's not going to be there. Who else we got? Gustafsson fights once in a couple of years. So it is lacking. It's needing a shot in the arm, but I think these guys moving up from middleweight. I'd like to see Whiteman go up to light heavyweight. I'd like to see Luke Rockhold go up to light heavyweight. I'd like to see Yoel Romero try it at light heavyweight. This could make the division much more exciting. And Anthony Smith, I think he'll give John Jones problems, but it's John Jones we're talking about. The man is so skilled in all art forms. He's the greatest mixed martial artist of all time, and he gets the job done. He'll probably finish him. Finish him in round 2 or 3. Elbows, maybe a submission, that kind of thing. But John Jones will take this fight, and it'll be hands still.
Yeah. And do you think John Jones may be taking Anthony Smith lightly, or do you think it's the opposite now? He's learned a few lessons, maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The lessons learned in the Gustafsson first fight. And he spoke about that at the press conference. Like, that was part of the reason why, in his mind, that's why it was such a close fight. And he was right. He was right, because look at the second fight, man. He stayed out of the boxing range. He did what he had to do, and then when he got him down, he couldn't get. Gustafsson didn't have any answers once he was down. And Jones just made it look particularly easy against a very tough opponent. But John Jones is. He's not mature outside the cage, but inside the cage he's very matured and settled, and he's great, man. I can't argue that he's not phenomenal, because he is. Yeah,
and you reckon a fairly early round 2, round 3?
I think first round they may cause him some problems. Jones will have figured that out by the time round 2 comes round. He'll get the finish in round 2, if not early round 3. Okay, excellent. Okay, Chris, your thoughts?
Well, I'm actually really looking forward to this one. Anthony Lionheart Smith is someone I've been really watching closely in all his fights. John is right though. The reason why one of the main reasons he has got his title shot is because there isn't much to choose from anymore, and people moving up will make it better. But he has got some credentials to give him this shot though, to be fair. So he's been at light heavyweight now. He's had 3 fights at light heavyweight. I think it's 3. Well, he's 3-0 at light heavyweight.
Yeah.
He's beat 2 world champions in that time, in Rashad Evans and Mauricio Shogun Hua. And the Hua fight, honestly, I think Hua landed like 3 or 4 shots in the whole fight, and just Anthony Smith just ripped him apart. And then it was great for him to show his submission skills as well. And Vulcan, as John said, is a great up-and-comer at the moment. And to defeat someone like him, who's up-and-coming so much with a massive height, to come and spoil that party, I think who's next? Let's give it to Anthony Smith. So that'd be great, because he did retire Rashad. You know, he retired a world champion. Rashad after that thought, no, that's enough. But personally, I think we all knew Rashad was on the way out. I think he knew it a bit more before some fighters do. For example, like BJ Penn, who just can't seem to leave it alone at the moment. I love him still. But you know, he's climbed to number 3 in the light heavyweight rankings quickly.
Smith's got a lot of experience, hasn't he? He's got 44 fights compared to John's 23.
Yeah, and he's been around the block twice and back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's got exactly double experience. And you say what, you don't see many fighters having a title shot against John Jones with 13 losses on their record, especially someone like him as young as him.
Yeah.
So I think definitely, I honestly think that Jones will win. He's just the better fighter all round of any fight. I think he will go to heavyweight and beat everyone there as well. No problem.
Yeah.
So I'm saying John Jones will win this, but I think Smith will take him the distance. I'm going out there on that one. I reckon Smith may go the distance. He hasn't gone the distance for a long time. Yeah. So maybe this is the fight they're dragging out. We'll see what he's got in him in the later rounds.
So you're saying Smith could take him into the championship rounds 4 and 5, but I think so, but not necessarily win. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good shout, because he's durable. A lot of people say he's durable, and he's got a lot of experience. So maybe he could find something to take it around 4 or 5. But prediction-wise, you're still saying John, but close fight.
Yeah, John Jones will take it, but I think we might be seeing another Gustafsson Jones 1 fight here. I really do, especially with 2 performances of the Knights in his last 2 fights as well.
But
so, can I just
sure. Yeah, please. Yeah.
We're talking about light heavyweights and up and coming. There's a guy on this card that we need to keep our eyes on, and that's Johnny Walker. I think he stepped in for his OSP's program.
Yes, very good point. Yeah.
We're looking at other fights, but if we're talking about and up and comers, that's the guy for me, man. Everybody keep your eyes on him.
Johnny Walker, yeah, that's a very good shout. Yeah.
Quick turnaround.
Trust a Scottish guy to notice Johnny Walker. Yeah.
Red label, man.
Hey, I'm a blue label man. Was. No, that's a good point. I think he's fighting Serkinov, and he was going to be St. Pierre, but he pulled out. So, I think, John, you made a good point about the weight as well, because a good majority of fights for Smith have been at middleweight. But if you're walking around at 210 and you're only cutting £5, or
what's the point exactly?
Yeah, and the stress of not weight cutting must add years to your career and must be so mentally nice not to be stressed. You know, a lot of fighters say they have two fights. The weight cut is the first fight, and then the actual fight is the second fight. So I agree with you, John. You know, this weight cutting, he's just got... I think they're going to wait for someone to die. That normally happens before they do anything, you know, unfortunately.
Didn't they ban, I don't know much about it, but IVF, rehydration or something like that?
Yeah, that was 2 or 3 years ago, which affected some fighters more than others. Johnny Hendricks and I think Jose Aldo struggled with that, with the IVF ban. Yeah, they banned that. I think they were trying to say, well, look, you know, you can't just liquidize yourself in an hour and get all your nutrients back. You're actually going to have to eat food. But some of this, the bounce back some of these guys get, so they cut 20, 30, 40 pounds, which is 2, 3, 4 stone in literally a couple of weeks. Some of them do it in the last week. And then they bounce back, you know, 20 pounds the night before, and they're coming 20 pounds heavier than they were from stepping on the scale. So it's a very murky, dark art, I think, weight cutting. And it's definitely dangerous, I would believe, that kind of drastic yo-yo dieting, as they would call it. But yeah, I think Smith, he's good. He's got good combinations. You know, if you see, I think a good percentage, 60-odd%, is via TKO. So he's got power, and he can certainly turn it on. And he's got a 50+% TKO KO ratio, but I just don't see anything special in him. And I think if you're going to beat John Jones, you got to have something special, and I don't see that in Anthony Smith. I see a lot of good stuff, but nothing. And I agree with both of you that you said about John Jones. He's got so many tools in his toolbox that if he gets into trouble, he normally finds a way to get out of it. And also, I think he's learned from the Gustafsson fight. I think he'll strategize more and not get egotistical too much. And I can see him probably submitting Anthony Smith or a ground and pounding. I think he'll be later on, John, probably not early, because Smith is pretty tough and very experienced. So I think he'll probably be around 3 or 4. Where John Jones finishes Anthony Smith. So I'm going for a John Jones finish in round 3 or 4, I think. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so I just wanted to actually, I didn't say it at the top of the show, but we've obviously got Paul Daly and MVP. Michael Van Page, and they're fighting up Bellator 216, I think. So, Chris, give us your thoughts on that. It's probably the biggest fight in British MMA history, I would say. Can't think of a bigger fight where there's 2 British guys fighting that legitimately world class, you know, world level fighters. They're not in the top promotion, but still, I would still call them world class. What do you think of that fight, and who do you think's going to win?
Well, I've been a huge fan of Paul Daly for a long time in the UFC, watching him fight for his way through that. But obviously got a fan when it was a bit disappointing for the British MMA world when he decided to crunch cross-check when he wasn't even looking after the belt. I think it was Dan Mergliotta.
Stupid move.
Got in the way of that.
Yeah.
No, that was so stupid.
Yeah.
He could have done, you know what cross-check's like. He was laying and praying on top of him. He was like talking all sorts of stuff in his ear.
He was winding him up.
Through.
Yeah.
I think he'd get it to most of us. But so MVP, I've watched. Only been watching Bellator, to be honest with you, for maybe like the last year or 2, but I have been following it as much as I can. I mean, I've been following it a lot more recently. But MVP really impresses me. I love his fighting styles. You know, everywhere you look on Facebook stories, everywhere, it's just always clips of him doing some sort of spinning kick or something crazy. And you can't forget at the time the image that went around when he did the flying knee,
Cyborg. It was
one of the most horrendous things I've ever seen.
Yeah, there was a dent in his forehead, was there, or around his skull? Yeah, that was horrible.
That was probably worse than Mark. What's his name? Well, he had the big hematoma in his head. That one.
Oh yeah, the one of Hominick. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
That was against Jose Aldo, wasn't it?
Some kind of prize for answering these questions.
Chris, get John a t-shirt. He's answering all your questions.
Sorry, mate.
But yeah, it's sorry, Chris, carry on. Yeah.
Sorry, mate. So yeah, but no, it's going to be a great fight. I think MVP will take it. He just has the style of fight that always seems to come through, and I think he will defeat Daly, and I think he'll do it before the final bell by TKO.
Okay, excellent. John?
Let's not count Semtex out, man. He still brings power.
Yeah.
He gives up on fights when it's a John Fitch, when it's a Koscheck, when he gets frustrated when it's someone trying to hold him down and grind him out.
Yeah.
And he makes that known, doesn't he? He turns to the camera and gives them their thoughts and has a go at the promotion. But if it's a stand-up fight,
yeah.
I mean, I guess MVP can frustrate you on the feet, but if he gets caught with anything that Paul Semtex Daly's thrown, it's good night. If anyone's in the receiving end of how hard he bangs, that's tricky for anyone's chin, man. So I don't know. I think it's going to be. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. Look at MVP, man. Yeah, it's they've built him up the right way. You could argue that a lot of times he's just had hand cans, but whatever, man. Our promotion's got to do what's got to do, right? But this is a big test for him, and I'm interested to see how you want a prediction, MG, but. I don't want to sit in the fence, man. I hate the offence there, so I'll go for MVP, but I don't think it'll be as tight as I don't think it'll be as easy for him as maybe we're being led to believe.
Okay, yeah. You got to give Semtex his props. Absolutely, he's been around a while. If he had a slightly better attitude, he'd probably still be in the UFC, and who knows, could have had a run at the title. MVP is one of those guys that's so naturally talented. In the boxing world, you had Roy Jones Jr., you had Prince Hamid. In MMA, you got sort of Dominic Cruz, that you do sort of unorthodox things, but obviously you can't coach that to the average kid that comes into your gym. So it's a lot of it is just natural talent. Whether he's gonna modify his style because of, like John said, the threat of Paul Daly, one left hook and he could be out within a second, less than a second. So whether he's going to slightly modify his style, I don't know. Whether he can modify his style, probably not. He's fought that way, and he's got that natural ability to keep his hands down and bob and weave and move his head, and then coming out of sort of bending down, then coming up and then throwing a punch and then knocking someone out, which it's fascinating, and it's great. It's a great shot in the arm for British MMA and European MMA in general. Obviously it would have been 20 times bigger if it was a UFC event, but Bellator's pretty much on the rise, so I'm like you, John. It's almost 60-40 MVP. I can't see a submission. I don't think it'll go to ground. So I imagine there's going to be a KO, and I'll probably just nudge towards MVP for a KO. He might just pull something off special, but we'll see. But it's definitely going to be interesting. Okay, moving on to the fan question part of the show. I think we got time for one, maybe two, but let's go with one first. So we're going a question from Jose in Spain, Jose Inacio, and he says about the merits of a title match. We sort of touched on it before with Covington. Is there any merit, particularly talking about the UFC, is there any merit in title fights, or is it all promotion? I'm sure we've spoken about this many times before. It keeps popping up, and the interim belt, does that mean anything? So Chris, give us your thoughts on that. If title fights, do they mean that much, and are they given on merit or promotion or money making or?
Well, I think in any organisation you look at, a lot of fights are made for a money-making sort of, so whatever is the exposure of the biggest money-maker. But I do believe they're a lot better than places like boxing organisations who seem to get, I find, a lot of hand-picked fighters for themselves, opposed to UFC where this ranked top 5 or 10 ranked fighter will fight this other top 10 or 5 ranked fighter, which I think they do keep strict to. And but recently They have been making more money fights, I feel. They've been making more of these interim fights because they don't want the champions out for too long, and the title fights give them leeway to get onto pay-per-view. So if they make it an interim fight, it's an interim title fight, it's still classed as a title fight. So I think this was what gives them more of a credential to actually make the fight happen. But back in the day, it wasn't like that. Whoever was number one fought number two, etc.
Yeah.
So I think there is still I think it's a lot better than a lot of other organisations. UFC, a lot better. A lot of other different sports as well. They're definitely a lot better.
Yeah, John.
Well, I don't know. I guess, Jose, you're talking about the UFC and this
In particular, yeah.
This new era of the UFC. I mean, they're just handing out interim titles left, right, and centre, and it's I think it's just to slap a title on a poster. Really, if I'm honest, I think it does lose a bit of its merit. And the rankings, man. I mean, we've all had a good one about the rankings over the last couple of years. Anyway, they're pretty much meaningless. UFC will matchmake whoever they need to matchmake in order to sell or get television numbers or pay-per-view buys or whatever. The title itself, I still think there's you can hold that in high regards. Look at the guys at the champions just now. I don't think there's anyone not deserving of a title in any of those weight divisions. But an interim title I could do without, unless of course it's something like it's an injury like it used to be.
Like Dominic Cruz was out for 2 years. Yeah,
exactly, something like that.
Yeah.
When GSP was out and there was an interim title or whatever. But interim titles for the sake of interim titles, I could do without.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a balance. Obviously, it's a promotion, but it's got to make money as a business, like any business. But I think the P for promotion has been a very big capital P in the last few years. I think they've got to bring that down a bit because you still got to have legitimacy of number one, number two, number three contender. And going back 10, 15 years, possibly longer, they still had the super fights, but they were real, sort of contender fights and championship fights. Straight away comes to mind is Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell. They had 3 fights and they were champion. Then he took it off him. Then he got it back. So you can still have these mega fights, but they still mean something. But if they keep trying to shoehorn a talented guy, someone who's got a lot of hype, someone who's good on the mic, which is the old WWE effect, possibly, then it could cheapen the belt. I don't think it has cheapened the real belt, but I agree with interim. It's sort of giving it out too often, and then they just take it off for no reason. Like Tony Ferguson, and then he had a whinge, and Kobe Covington, and so on. So it is a bit of a haphazard way that's done. I agree. It was more legitimate way was when Dominic Cruz was out, GSP was out, and you could easily say they were going to be out for at least 12 months. So you got to sort of bring someone in there and have someone holding the belt until that champion returns. But I think it may come back to having a more, like even with boxing, the WBO, WBC, they even though they can give a bit of fodder to the champion, 3 or 4 defenses, at some point the champion has to fight their number one contender, and champions have lost their belt if they refuse to fight a particular contender in WBC number one. So, but UFC is purely a promotion. It's not really a governing body, as we've seen what happened with Conor and other people. They don't really hand out any punishment. And these fighters are an investment, and like with any investment, you're careful with your investments, whether it's stocks and shares or some guy that beats up another guy in a cage. So it's interesting, but I think hopefully it's coming back to where being number one contender, number two contender actually means something rather than just on a piece of paper. Okay, excellent. Thank you. I think we're coming right up to the 45-minute mark. So this has been the MMA Shower episode 15, UFC235 Jones versus Smith. You can, John, could you give us your contact details and tell us when your fantastic podcast is on again?
Thank you very much, Josh. And we'll need to get you back on, G. It's been far too long, my friend.
Absolutely, yeah.
Live every Sunday for the roundtables, martial arts chat, facebook.com/martial arts chat. On Twitter it's @martial arts chat as well. We've just done the Cage Warriors show. We'll be doing some fighter interviews for UFC London coming up as well. But yeah, check us out live every Sunday, 8:30 PM in the UK. If you're in the States or wherever you're listening, go figure out a time zone because I'm sick of figuring it out. But yeah, doing some exciting stuff. Myself and Chris will be we're working currently with MMA Power Hour. They're live every Sunday in the States, and we're excited to be working with those guys as well. But yeah, check me out. It's @martial arts chat for where we're at.
Excellent. Chris, give us your contact details, what you're up to.
Well, yeah, thanks again for having me on the show first time. Really enjoyed it.
No, it's really good to have you on, yeah.
So basically, so currently I'm just running a Facebook page to search for MMA Fight Bible. It's a Facebook page. We can go for about a year and a half. It's always up-to-date news, videos, funny stuff, good knockouts, old school knockouts, all up-to-date, relevant news. And as John said, myself and John are also currently doing a new segment on MMA Power Hour, which I think he said was Wednesdays. They're live every Wednesday. Yeah, please tune into that as well. But yeah, no, really appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking to start my own podcast soon. So when I do, I'll definitely be sending you an invite, G. That'd be great.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you, Chris. So yeah, you can contact the MMA Shower with email, the MMA Show 7@gmail.com. The Facebook is Let's Talk MMA, and the Twitter is @G the MMA Show, @G the MMA Show. I penned a few articles for purelymma.co.uk. Matthew Penny, who's quite a regular guest on John's show and this show as well. So I've done a few articles on there, so check out purelymma.co.uk. Okay, this has been the MMA Shower 7, episode 15. The MMA Shower, episode 15, sponsored by hattonjameslegal.co.uk. Thank you very much.
MMA Shower on SRBRadio.com.